Right. And finally, I'd like to introduce Mr. Kobe Timmins.
Oh, Mr. I've been promoted to Mr.
What was it before?
I don't know.
Is that how you greet all your men?
So this isn't the first time you've been to talk to us, is it really? And I remember you talking before about the leather industry, but this time, just, in October as we run up to Halloween, you're coming to talk to us about the ghosts of Jabez Cliff. Yes. So over to you.
Okay, right. How many people here believe in ghosts? I've got a few. Right. Now, talking about the funeral of the late Queen, Jabez Cliff were actually involved, and they probably still have, although the company is ceased trading, a lot of the equipment on the gun used on the gun carriages and on the household cavalry. All of that, most of that would have been made by Jabez Cliff. That's a by the by. Right. Now, the ghosts of Jabez Cliff. Now, to help me, I used psychics. Now, psychics, you have to be very careful. You don't tell them anything. David Okora was an absolute beep, because a lot of the time, and it's been, it's actually been written about, that he used to find out where it was and then find a few notes, information on what had gone on, and then he would actually use it and say, so-and-so, so-and-so. No. So I kept quiet. If I was to say to somebody that if you go into the next room, there's a man there with a parrot on his shoulder, tricorn hat, only got one leg, supporting himself on a crutch. That's the story you probably get. So I was very, very careful in what I said. But one piece of information I was told, and this was in 2003. I was told a month later a story, and it was 5 years later. I hadn't written it down, and it was so crazy. A woman actually came into the factory, and she went and told me exactly the same thing as this woman, as I was told by a psychic. Exactly the same thing, and it's so unbelievable. It had to be true. I've used paranormal experts, the doubting Thomases. I've had them scared out of their wits. I've had a 6'4" gentleman built like a brick toilet. The sort of person, if he was walking down the street, you would walk on the other side of the road. I have seen him scared out of his wits, shaking, swearing at the top of his voice, and ran out of the factory. He said, "I'm not coming here again." That's another story. And then last but by no means least, I use the employees. Things have been going on for years, but nobody spoke about it. As soon as I started something, everybody's saying, "What about so-and-so? What about so-and-so?" By the time it all finished, we had more than 20 ghosts. More than 20. I know that my grandfather's a ghost, my grandmother's a ghost, and an uncle's a ghost. I know that for a fact. More than likely, my mother's going to be a ghost. She'll probably be around the whiskey bottle, but more stories about that later. But she only had a tipple at after 6 o'clock at night. But how did it all start? It began with a telephone call. "Hello, Cliff, I'm from the BBC. Yes," he said, I need to come and look at your factory. I've been told by the Walsall Leather Museum, I've been told by the Walsall Leather Museum that it is a place that is perfect to film an episode. I said, "Yes, when would you like to come? Tomorrow?" He said, No, I'm in Walsall, I'll come in now. And he was down at the museum, and he popped in 20 minutes later, and he walked around the factory. He said, "We're going to use this factory." I said, "Well, look, I've got to speak to the other directors just to get it all done." It took some time. He was just a photographer coming in there and doing the research. And it took them 2-3 months to get it all finalized. They finally came in and checked, and they said yes. And they were in for 7 days. And the first night they were filming, and they were filming mainly at night. I was walking through, and a psychic says, this person said to me, you have ghosts in your factory. I said, look, stop pulling my leg. No, you have ghosts. I've seen them. He said, I'm a spiritualist. I said, I've seen two men. Now, I can't remember the description of one of the men, but the one of them, it's in here. And he said, he's small and stocky, very stout. Looks just like a hooker in a rugby team, just built like a brick toilet, but small, squat, and extremely long arms. He looks just like he looks just like a wrestler. And I thought, pull the other leg. I didn't say anything. The following day, BBC hadn't arrived, and we had a gentleman called Oliver Morton, who was the president of the company, started in 1929, and he started working in the factory, and he worked his way up from the ground floor right to the top. And I went to Oliver and I said, Oliver, I've been told that in the old packing room there is two ghosts. And I mentioned it, I told him, oh, it's so-and-so, so-and-so. He died in the 1930s. And I thought, crikey. And I was also told at the same time that in our old hardball shop, there were a woman and child sitting on the stairs. So I used to take some of the employees home, because they lived on the way I went home. I used to drop them off. And I just happened to say to them, one of them I used to pick up at the post office in Walsall and take her to work. And she said to me, I was talking to her, she said, we've got ghosts. I thought nothing more of it. And she came back as I was driving her back a couple of nights later. She said, oh, by the way, we're going to have a ghost club. We're going to have a ghost club. We're going to find out what we've actually got in the factory. I said, well, let me do some research. And I saw at the time, going into Walsall one day, about April, I saw, because it started in January, I saw a sign saying psychic event. So I went to the psychic event and I told them about it. And this lady said, I'm interested. Can I bring two other people? I said, feel free. She said, they're paranormal experts. I said, the more the merrier. I said, I just need it sorted out. And the factory, this picture is very fragile, so it's right. That was the factory. It's shaped in the letter L, so it's a large frontage. It was 150 feet deep, shaped in the letter F. So we had one wing built in 1870. The next wing was built in 1906, and the extension was built in 1976. But it must have been 30, 60, almost 150 feet wide. So it was a big site. And I was around the factory, and I spoke to the psychics, and we went in by side door. I do have some maps here, but they keep up. Every time I do this talk, the problem is that people like keeping them. Now, all of you, before you leave, you must actually have one of the AGMs. I think I'm going to take them home. And yet I tried to keep these, and somebody's, I've kept it. Well, that's the last copy I've got. But we actually used to come in by a side door. As soon as I walked in the side door, the psychic came in. She said, my God, he said, this place is active. We walked in, she got up, she said, over there, and the paranormal experts have got little gadgets. These are the ones, if you watch any of the American programs, Ghost Adventures, or they actually have little gadgets that you can actually do it to test that it's used on food, basically, but it gives you the temperature of the area. And you were having differences of 5 to 10 degrees centigrade in an area. You just couldn't believe it. It was just there. And just on the ground floor alone in this one department, there were 4 or 5 spots. She just couldn't believe it. And she started mentioning names. And as soon as we were in there, and this was about 7:30 in the evening, footsteps overhead. They said, you've got burglars. I said, no, it's the go. Because we all used to hear it, because I used to come in at, do you remember when we had the petrol problem in the 70s?
Yes.
I was actually coming in at 1 o'clock in the morning, and I was having to fill little heaters, paraffin heaters, with paraffin and light them up so the employees would actually be warm. And you only realise it well after the event. But footsteps are a regular occurrence, and smells. Smells quite often. You had lavender, carbolic soap, you name it, the smells were there, and cigarettes of all different descriptions. We went onto the top floor, which is where the stitches used to be. Have any of you ever been in a saddle factory? Bridal shop? No. There is a piece of equipment. And she said to me, now, she didn't know what she was talking about, seriously. But it was something, it took me some time to think about it. She said, it looks as if the women are cycling. You've got a whole group of women. This woman is full. And it was the football shop. This is where they used to make all the footballs. It was packed in the 30s. And she said that they're cycling, and I thought, that's stupid, that's not right. But then I began to think, and if you look at any saddle factory, right, you look at their equipment, you look at bridal preparers, they have a piece of what we call clams, and they are wooden, and they're shaped, they're about this tall, and they've got a mouth at the top that closes, and it's actually closed there's a gap in the side of the clams, and it goes down, and they actually use a stirrupine. Leather stirrupine, leather and the stirrupine on it. So they can actually, when they put the foot down in the clams, it actually closes the clams, and you can actually keep the leather tight. And that is what she saw. So although she hadn't been in the factory, she didn't know anything about the industry, she was actually right in what she said. But she turned towards the car park, facing the town hall, and she said something. I just scratched my head and I said, no. That can't be true. And as I said, you're going to hear about that at the end of the talk. Actually, watch what she said to me. It was so unbelievable. You had to believe, I just thought, this isn't true. I'll never forget it. So we went and we carried on the top floor. We went round the block, and she was describing all different things. Then we went into the old apprentice shop. Well, I did. She just came to the door. She went like that. She said, no way. I'm not going in. I'm not going in there. What's wrong? Said, a man's committed suicide in there. Said, are you sure? I said, yes, Andy's killed his children. This was in the before we had the building, which was about between 1870 and 1880. He'd actually killed the family, killed his whole family, then came to work and hung himself on one of the beams. But that play, it was crazy. We walked downstairs, and I had been told that we had a woman and child sitting on the stairs in the old hardball department. And we walked down, and they got their gadgets. And my God, this is seventh stair from the top of, this is in the hardball department. We were looking there, and what happened is that the gadgets started to go totally nuts. So we said, we're going to get our cameras. We'll get out. So they went and got the video cameras, and they said, we're going to bring the halogen lights. And they brought two massive halogen lights. But, there must have been 5 feet tall, 6 feet tall, with big, you're talking massive, I don't know what you call them, frame, the lamp part was big. So it really gave out light. And it was still light outside, but it needed the light to give it more emphasis. And we were there, it said, right, Cliff, when we're ready, we must, we'll tell you when to switch it on, and then we can start filming. So they started. We said, right, Cliff. And they pressed it down. All of a sudden, boom! The two halogen lights behind me blew. Literally blew. They just, Glass was all over the place. I got it all over my back, stuck in my t-shirt. The language in that room, and there were ladies there as well, was descriptive. Old English, black country, good old black country English. That is what, that was what was used. And they said, I don't believe it. The paranormal experts were like this. They had never seen anything like it. And they said, I wonder if we've caught anything on film. We went outside and we had a look. He said, they were using 2 cameras. He said, these have got new batteries in today. We actually bought these batteries this morning. We've put them in the camera. Both of the batteries are dead. Nobody has actually filmed anything in that room since. Nobody. It's filmed only on one occasion when I said something. Well, could somebody film? But nobody has actually had success. And that's employees. Employees have been there with the cameras taking photographs. Nothing. The camera's just dead. So I went there and I just said, my God, let's have a look at the pictures. And we had a look. And there was, for about 6-7 seconds, you could actually see 6 orbs. Now, not these faint things that you see on television. These were like table tennis or golf balls floating around the screen. And then the bright flash, and they just said, oh my God, do you realize that you're sitting on a gold mine? He said, this place is so active, it's crazy. So we had a big discussion and everything else. And they said, look, he said, you've got to get more investigations done. So I thought, I was literally didn't know what to do. So I spoke to my team. So I called them. They would always say, come on, Cliff, buy us a sandwich. And I'd buy them a sandwich on a Friday. And then they would come and help me, you see, because it was always Friday was sandwich day. And if you want to keep, you're going to love this. If you want to keep a lady happy in Walsall, at least at Jabers Cliff, you've got to do the right thing. You buy them a best. None of you know what a best is. Bacon, egg, sausage, and tomato sandwich. That's the best. That's what you buy them, and they love it. So they said, right, I said, what we got? Somebody said, contact Most Haunted. So I did. I wrote off to Most Haunted. And a year later, they turned up at the factory, because they're very busy. And unfortunately, because you can't say to them, look, I'm very sorry, I'm not in the factory. They come when they can come, not when you're available. I was in Sweden and I had to leave it to one of the team, and they came around the factory and they said, I'm very sorry. He said, she mentioned a name. And I said, yes. And she said, she did. Well, the lady said, oh, yes. He said, she's died. How long ago? A few months. And they just said, sorry, we can't use it. We can't use the factory. Because the problem they have is that if anything litigious legally, they can be, it's got to be 3 generations, because there could be a living relative around. Could be a living relative around. And then this is what did it for us. But I said to the employees, all of this story had happened while I was, everything that happened was while I was away. So I didn't get to know it. And I said, look, we've got to do something. So I said, right, we've got to have a ghost hunting evening. And we knew that one of the women in the factory was psychic. She was always telling me, Cliff, you wouldn't believe so. You're going to hear the stories later, but the stories were just rattling, that were happening. Ladies' toilets, plus. They were endless. So she said, oh, I'll come. I said, I can bring a friend. And I said, she's got 2 others who are psychic, and we'll form 2 teams, and we'll go around. So I went with another foreman and myself. He took one team and I took the other. And we all met, and we decided to have a spread. I said, everybody bring some food. And I brought a lot. I just gave one of the ladies some money so that she could come and get buy some stuff, for them in case they'd missed it out. And they missed anything out, and they put the kettle on with a big urn on. And they said, and if I go, sorry, I've got some notes here that were actually written that night. And she said, this is how it went. Standing at the bottom of stairs, leaning on the board, and we had a massive cutting board at the bottom of the stairs. And I've got the two people here. She felt the presence of a lady who had worked for more than 25 years. But she was short of stature. I moved from where she used to work and didn't like it, because the part of the trouble was that we had a major contract with a company, and they had just come in, and there were 4 companies in Warsaw that were dealing with these people. And they said, we just had a letter saying, we wish to advise you in 6 months' time, all production will be moved to China. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So what do you do when you've got when you've got a department full of women doing one specialist job for them? And so we had to sort of make do and mend. And she was short of stature. She didn't like it. Very strong-minded. Could have been a union leader. She was actually a forewoman, and a hell of a. If she said anything, she meant it. You couldn't pull the wool over her eyes. She had a chest condition and was always coughing. Had a bad turn at work and had to be taken home. I took her home. And this was going on. They were reading it out. And this person next to me, this is the lady who I used to take home. She said, you know who it is, don't you? Carol. That isn't her real name. I'm not going to tell you what it is, seriously. But it's Carol. He said, I knew after the second question, second thing. He said, that is Carol. He said, she's here. And then I started asking around, and I actually spoke to 2 of the employees. This is who worked in that department. Oh, she's been around. He said, do you know what happened while you were in Sweden? He said, one of the women went into the ladies' toilets and said, open the door of the ladies' toilets on the ground floor. And these doors I've never seen any before, but they were actually almost 8 feet tall, probably 8 feet tall, going right down to the floor. So you couldn't see underneath, and you could get over the top because it was as tall as this. So you could actually clamber over the top if you had to. And she opened the door, and she said she saw her on the toilet. She waved. And she came into the factory. She came into the general office, and she was screaming like a banshee. I've seen her. Who have you seen? And they said, she mentioned who it was. And the 2 guys told me, he said, well, what she used to do, she used to come through the factory, and you knew it was her because of the perfume she wore. She always wore a special perfume. And he said, how do you know it's you? How do you know the perfume? I said, you've got all the perfumes on the market. How do you know it? He said, it's the one my wife uses. It's a favourite. And he knew from that. He knew it was her. But she used to come around, and his father had died. She used to go and whisper in his ear. Just whisper and do things. And sometimes, you could feel his ear twitch. And that was her. That is absolutely true. We started to walk around the factory. We had footsteps, we had the smells. We went into one room on the ground floor, which is actually... We went into that room there. Sorry, Mr. Man, you can't see it, but it's there. That is where we went to. And there were some big boxes, and the psychic's voice changed. Put it back. Excuse me. Put it back now. Put what back? I said, put what back? She said, the door handle. And the door handle was missing. We just pushed the door open. And we went there, and it was the door handle, And it was the door, it was a complete doorknob. And it was actually, and we said, oh, I don't know where it is. And he actually said it was behind, this voice said it was behind a box. And we had got, because we were in the process of moving. And so this was one of our storerooms. And we had taken everything down, and we sort of somehow it had ended up behind a big box. And it said it's behind the big box. And they went there and they moved the box out of the way. There was the door handle. There was the door handle. And they put the door handle back on the door. Nothing else was said. When the next team came in, nothing. Absolutely true. We've had, as I mentioned about these doors, one problem that we had was that it happened about 4 or 5 times. These doors, as I said, were 8 feet tall, say 8 feet tall, and then you've got the problem of the gap above. They were locked from the inside. Now, how is it possible to lock it from the inside? Virtually impossible. You know, you can't do it unless you're a ghost. That latch was thrown. It was impossible to go across and link, because if you look at any toilet, the latches, they're down here. And look at that gap. But what we used to have in the factory, we used to adjust saddles. We used to make saddle trees, and you have the saddle bar, and they used to have this gadget to adjust a saddle bar. So you would actually put it there, and it was almost like a miniature golf club, but it got a little square at the end. And the foreman who was there that night, who used to lock up in the evening, he actually got hold of some step ladders, and he got hold of one of these gadgets, and he fitted something else to it, clamped it, and actually worked out that he could put this down there and actually open the toilet door, because he didn't know if anybody was inside. And that's happened 4 or 5 times in various rooms, in various places in the factory. Toilets left. You know, toilets, the taps left on. Regular occurrence. It was unbelievable. It was getting so over the years, we've had numerous incidents. We had the pie story, where we used to go by on a Friday, buy the sandwiches. And this one department on the ground floor, they bought the sandwiches. We had a special secure compartment at the back where we kept all our goods. These were goods for shipment, but they were kept safe, so they could be, once a week, they'd actually be out and then they'd be shipped. And this lady was inside, and she was eating a sandwich, and they said she had an urgent order that she had to finish. And she said, tell me when the shipment comes. So she left a sandwich on a plate. She basically had the sandwich, came in, put it on a plate, picked it up, had a mouthful, had a mouthful of tea, and came out. And she came back with the item that she required, horse bits, and she came there and she looked for a sandwich. Sandwich had gone off the plate. There's only one door in and one door out. And that sandwich had gone.